Welcome to SVG-TV's news for Friday, April 23rd, 2021. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. Lead scientist monitoring the La Soufrière volcano, Professor Richard Robertson, today reports on change in the ongoing eruptions of the volcano during his daily update on the activities of the volcano with Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves on NBC Radio. Professor Robertson noted that the gap could remain constant from this point on or shorten.
So the build up to this one was slightly different, and all of the others that had increasing gaps. And it's still early days yet, but we think that the pattern is changing slightly. So there is no guarantee that the gap would continue to lengthen. It maybe is going to something slightly different. But the good thing is that so far the explosions continue to be not really very big explosions. Probably certainly not of the kind of explosivity of the very early part of the eruption. The explosions are more of the order of the ones that we've had, which are very discrete. They send a plume up in the air. In this case, this one only went up, we estimate, about 8,000 meters, probably a little bit more than that. And a lot of the ash was at the lower level and went towards the west. So you don't get the impression that they're very energetic. They're not going very high. They're not as energetic as the earlier ones. But I wouldn't put too much, until we see how the next one plays out, I wouldn't put too much faith on continuation of the lengthening of the gap. It might be that the gap is now constant rather than lengthening.
Dr. Robertson explained the three forces which determines how the volcano will erupt, noting that the amount of gas inside determines the aggressive moment of a volcano.
The magma, it essentially breaks up, it fragments. And that's where you have explosions. So that's the second force. So you have the buoyancy, you have the gases. And then the other thing is if something comes in. If you had a chamber down below and something new comes in, it kind of pushes the magma that was there. It affects it. It changes it might heat it up, it might do various things to it, but it gets it going. So there are those three forces. So this volcano is driven to a large extent by those three forces. Now we think what happened here generally is that somewhere deep in it, the magma chamber deep in it got overpressured. It got overpressured because something changed it and caused it to start to move, either because the buoyancy forces changes or because something new came in. And as it starts moving up, it starts getting, these gases starts coming out. They exsolve, and as they exsolve, it gets to the stage where it fragments. Now, the thing that we don't know is the extent to which, how much gas is involved in this eruption. And that's sort of, how much, we get the impression there's a lot of gas. And that gas had a hard time coming out initially. Remember, there was a dome capping it at the top, and it couldn't come out. And therefore it pressurized, and eventually it went bang, you had an explosion.
The scientist said that a pattern suggests that things will now be more discreet and there will be small events at the volcano which will only affect the northern part of the island.
Now, there's nothing to say. What we'll be looking for to see if something fundamental changes is, it's a couple of things. We're not sure how much gas is in there, so therefore we don't know how long it could keep on doing what it's doing, right? Secondly, we don't know if there's more down in the chamber that's pushing it. And we don't know if that would be involved. So in terms of what is happening now, it looks like what's playing out is just that finite amount that came up and is involved. And if that is it, well, the explosions would become probably either of the same order or slightly weaker as we go on in time. They may be regular as they may increase from when they were to now as they were, or they may become regular. So that pattern, there's nothing that's in that pattern is fundamentally changing. But what we will be looking for going forward is any evidence that that something new is coming in, or that the gas beneath is sort of getting to a stage where it's becoming pressurized again, and it probably could have bigger explosions. But so far, to answer your question, the explosions and the patterns suggest that we're heading, at least for this period, to things that are more.
The catastrophic situation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which suffered a series of volcanic eruptions this month that left the country in a state of emergency, is affecting the availability and affordability of food. So said Minister of Agriculture, Saboto Caesar, who calculated the local agricultural losses at more than $150 million. Minister Caesar, who was speaking before the Special Advisory Commission on Management Issues of the Inter-American Institute of Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA, reported that agriculture, fishing, and road infrastructure and other areas have problems that affect food security and sovereignty, as the affordability, accessibility, and availability of food is at risk. St. Vincent and the Grenadines was affected by massive ashfall after the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano, the first since April 1979, which caused earthquakes to force displacement of some 20,000 people. This catastrophe has driven the country into a humanitarian crisis, according to reports presented by the IICA staff in the Caribbean nation, the UN, and the local authorities. The Agriculture Minister thanked the partners and countries that have expressed their solidarity. The Director General of the IICA, Manuel Orero, for his support and the assistance that have already been received from the Institute. Minister Caesar added that SVG will shortly launch a platform for the reconstruction of the agricultural sector and initiative for which he also requested assistance and support. Meantime, leader of the opposition New Democratic Party, Dr. Godwin Friday, along with several members of the party and its public relations arm, have surveyed the devastation in the North Windward area caused by the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano. In a telephone interview with SVG-TV News, Dr. Friday described the level of devastation that he and his team encountered as extraordinary. He said that the party is providing essential supplies to persons primarily sheltering in private homes who have been identified or identified themselves, who have been identified by representatives of their party.
Team of us who went. Senator Chevron John, who is somebody who's been evacuated herself because she lives in Oya, Chieftain Neptune, who is the NDP caretaker in North Central Windward, and Senator Israel Bruce, whose community is hosting many of the people from North Windward who had to be evacuated, and General Secretary Tyrone Jones and Public Relations Officer Laverne King, and a friend and supporter Kenson King, who has been doing a lot of work on the ground. It really was a very sad sight, confirming some of the worst reports we've heard, in the sense that the level of devastation is quite extraordinary, especially in the community of Sandy Bay. We have been mobilizing as much as we can immediately to assist those persons, foodstuff, a limited amount of clothing that we have received, and some other essential items, personal hygiene products and so forth. We urge our friends to continue to send the resources. You can send them, to us. You can send them to individuals or organizations that you trust. The important thing is that you send the resources here so that we can get them to the people now and over the course of time when they're needed.
In his canvassing of the various government shelters, Dr. Friday also spoke of the immediate needs he noted, which include emotional and mental support for adults and children.
There is still a great need for bedding, mattresses, dividers to give people some privacy. They're all there for a while and so forth, and everybody sort of puts up with the inconvenience for a week or so, but 3-4 weeks down the road, people are not going to be so tolerant because they're thinking that they can go back to their lives soon, but it's not going to happen soon. And so once that settles in, we have to make sure that there are provisions, there are material resources, so that they can live dignified lives in these communities, in these centers, while they are away from home, and they can help to shape that and be active in creating better conditions for them. Not just the physical conditions, but also the activities to keep them emotionally and mentally engaged as well, and facilities for the children.
Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Anthony Regisford, says the years of preparation for disasters has assisted in the efficient coordination of efforts through the Chamber of Commerce on the ground. Regisford says members of the Chamber have been asked to make their contributions to the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO. He said private sector contributions are guided by a list that outlines the immediate needs of evacuees in order to prevent duplication and scarcity of much-needed supplies. This, however, has not prevented members from adopting shelters as well On a regional level, Regisford says chambers across the Caribbean region were activated and private sector responses were sent through the channel at the national disaster management level in each country. Regisford used the opportunity to commend the efforts by the private sector locally and regionally.
Activated all the chambers in that network, 22 of them, across the Caribbean, not just CARICOM countries, working with that same list that was circulated to the various executive directors. And they in turn sent that out to their membership. And that's what guided their contributions. What most, if not all, of the chambers in the region did, the private sector got their contributions together in the various countries, and they channeled it through the country response, through the National Disaster Management Agency there. And as you know, all these National Disaster Management Agencies are a part of CDMA, the umbrella body. So that's how we have been responding, Teresa. The response throughout the Caribbean has been excellent.
Apart from donations of supplies and cash that Vincentians in the USA have been collecting to assist with the relief efforts on the island, the Political Directorate in New York has made several pledges to assist the island, including pushing for a bill to help garner more support for disaster-stricken SVG and other Caribbean countries in the Caribbean which are unable to purchase their share of COVID-19 vaccines. This is according to SVG's Consul General to the USA, Howie Prince, on a program on VC3 earlier this week.
The pledges that we've had came from Congressional Representative Yvette Clarke and backed by Congresswoman Plaskett. They have pledged that they are going to go to Congress to pilot a bill for assistance in Vincent and Grenadines, where they would push a bill to assist the government and people of St. Vincent and Grenadines. But they want to include in that bill not just a small assistance to St. Vincent and Grenadines, but also consideration for the wider Caribbean, so that countries that are struggling to finance vaccinations for COVID-19 can be financed through that bill that they're piloting.
Prince says the Mayor of New York, Bill de la Bolisio, was also agreed to come on board to speak to other members of Congress and to ensure the request being made by the Political Directorate makes it to the ears of those most influential in assisting the cause. In addition to this, Prince shared that Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves has also written to the U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to advocate for St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Has also indicated that he's going to use his good office to bounce our requests up at higher levels to the governor's office and to meet with other Senate leaders who they're going to ask to push our case. The Honorable Prime Minister has written to the President of the United States, and he has also written to the Vice President, who we know is a Caribbean lady, Harris, and whom he has specifically requested that she champions the St. Vincent and Grenadines story and the Caribbean needs, so that when the American government meets on our issue, we can at least have one Caribbean voice in addition to the congressional leadership that is planning to advocate on our behalf.
Prince noted that the Political Directorate in New York is fully on board to stand behind St. Vincent and the Grenadines in ensuring the island receives the aid it requires. He further added that the needs of St. Vincent and the Grenadines far outweigh food and general supplies, as rebuilding efforts are expected to be quite costly and expensive.
We're not just talking about assistance for food and water, which is to alleviate the humanitarian aspect of the disaster that we have on our hand now. We are talking about the long-term recovery process, where we want countries like the United States to become involved in the recovery of livelihoods, in rebuilding helping to rebuild our farms, helping to rebuild the infrastructure that's damaged. The Honorable Prime Minister has shared a great document from the World Bank, which has begun an analysis of what it's going to take to rebuild different infrastructures in St. Vincent. And the bill that I've seen is very, very high. The cost is adding up to a point where St. Vincent and Grenadines is going to need a lot of money and a lot of funding resource and technical support to rebuild our farms, our infrastructure, and the livelihoods that are all lost as a result of this tremendous displacement and the adverse outcome from the last great volcano.
The ash and dust in the atmosphere from an explosive eruption can cause significant problems to one's respiratory system, skin, and eyes. In an interview with SVG-TV News, infectious disease specialist said that the ash can lead to red eyes, itchy skin, or even bronchitis. However, he noted that persons who are still in the red zone will have a greater impact from the ash.
Ash's abrasive particles can scratch the surface of the skin and the eyes, causing discomfort and inflammation. And if inhaled, the volcanic ash can cause certainly breathing problems and damage to the lungs. Inhaling large amounts of ash and volcanic gases can cause persons to suffocate, I must say. And this clearly would be mainly for persons who are still close in the red zone, where pyroclastic flows are taking place. And for other individuals, it would be the exposure comes mainly from cleaning and from wind blowing dust, or being behind a vehicle that's moving fast and that's kicking up the dust. Somebody can be exposed to the dust in this way. So in the early stages, the ash would contain dangerous chemicals that we know of, carbon dioxide, sulfates, hydrochloric acid.
Dr. Thompson added that the ash contains dangerous chemicals such as carbon dioxide, hydrochloric acid, hydrofluoric acid, and sulfurate. He highlighted some of the conditions that the ash can lead to and encouraged persons to wear protective gear.
And we look at respiratory symptoms such as runny nose, sore throats, coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, possible bronchitis. And with the eyes, we are mainly worried about the scratchy eyes. The eyes become bloodshot. There could be corneal abrasions and scratches, and then this could lead to conjunctivitis, especially if somebody's rubbing their eyes. And we want to tell persons, and of course all this leads to a lot of tearing. What I want to say is that one of the important is to wear protective clothing, goggles, dust mask, and if you're in a building, even to seal that building. Those with pre-existing respiratory conditions should stay inside, a particular area.
The infectious disease specialist also spoke on a disease that can be caused from volcanic ash. However, he noted that persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have nothing to worry about when it comes to this disease.
Yes, pneumo ultra microscopic silico volcanoconiosis is a long word. Matter of fact, it's more known as probably one of the longest words in the world rather than an actual prevalent disease. It has 45 letters in it. But it is caused by persons who have been chronically inhaling silica-type products. With a volcanic eruption, there is certainly going to be some acute inhalation of these very fine particles. But in your lungs have a system and a way of being able to clear dust.
The outpatient clinics and community health services outside of the red zones continue. Hence, Mental Health Rehabilitation Center is informing the general public that persons who were displaced without their medication to contact the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center at telephone number 458-6185 or 458-4240 or the nearest health center. This could be to facilitate getting the patient to their nearest clinic or to have the community healthcare team check in with the patient so that medication can be given. The outpatient clinics where services are offered are on Tuesday at Stubbs Polyclinic, Wednesday at the Bookmans Bay Polyclinic, and Friday at the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center. UNICEF and FLO have signed a memorandum of understanding which will see the telecommunications provider sending life-saving tips before, during, and after disasters on behalf of the UNICEF directly to the phones of those affected. Dr. Alois Kamaragi, UNICEF's representative for the Eastern Caribbean, speaking at a virtual signing ceremony, said the signing is timely as members of UNICEF are currently on ground assisting the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in its response to the explosive eruption of the La Soufrière volcano. Kamaragi said UNICEF Eastern Caribbean has been a multi-country program of cooperation with 12 countries and territories. At any given time, one or more of these countries or territories can be severely impacted by an emergency. This, he says, has seen in 2017 when 5 islands were devastated by Category 5 hurricanes Irma and Maria. In the aftermath of that disaster, Kamaragi says it was noted how much persons relied on their phones for information and to communicate with relatives and friends. This relation began an informal agreement with FLO, which has been solidified in the formal signing of a memorandum of understanding.
The things we learned in 2017 was that while people often left belongings behind as they sought safety during a disaster, the one thing they kept close was their phone. We partnered with FLO to send life-saving messages to children and their families. During the next 5 years, we will continue to do so before, during, and after emergencies. Good communication is key in any emergency. It not only saves lives, but dispels myths and helps remove uncertainty.
Also present at the ceremony was the country manager of FLO Barbados, Jensen Sylvester, who noted that the telecommunications company was very proud of their formal partnership with UNICEF. He added that the company looks forward to continuing to share life preservation tips that aid in early prevention and robust recovery in the face of a disaster. Meanwhile, in a further move to support the urgent relief and recovery activities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in light of the La Soufrière volcanic activity, Digicel has ensured that the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Authority, CDEMA, was equipped and mobilized with a donation of 30 smartphones. The smartphones came fully loaded with Digicel Prime bundles featuring 222 gigabytes of data, 12 gigabytes any use data, dedicated data for each of Digicel's 8 apps, plus 1,000 Digicel minutes and 400 cross-network minutes. Acting Executive Director of CDEMA, Mrs. Elizabeth Riley, said the timely contribution enhances the work of the response teams on the ground. She pointed out that it is real-time partner support which is critical, during this crisis situation in coordinating humanitarian efforts for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Commenting on the donation of Digital St. Vincent's and the Grenadines, CEO Fanta Williams said it is Digital's job to help keep people safe and to keep them connected, and at the same time to get important work helping people in need.